How's it going, everyone? Bryce Newberger with the Soul Word here, and today we're going to talk about pronouns and pronoun usage. So I've been involved in a number of conversations on both sides of the spectrum, and sides is going to be really important in this conversation going forward because that's exactly what we're looking at. This is a debate that is spreading across what is known as a culture war, a war for the culture. And so it's important to adopt that terminology to really understand where each side is coming from. Now, the idea of a culture war might be more one-sided as far as its adopted usage. More on the conservative side, conservative people view it as wanting to win the culture war. The more liberal side will view it as making positive change in communities and through the world, and they adopt that through social change, through changing social dynamics within the culture. So one side might not be so happy, the liberal side might not be so happy calling it a war. I haven't heard them use that term. But I've been an interested participant in this because I really don't have a stake in this per se. I personally haven't been involved in activism one way or another. What I care about is people. I want to hear people. I want to know people. And so I've heard people on both sides, and I've known people on both sides, and I've sat down and had really great, respectful conversations with people on every angle, I feel like, of the spectrum. I have contemplated having some people on to share and talk, and I might do that in the future. In fact, some of the people I have on in the future may have different pronouns that they use, and people who use different pronouns, I consider them my friends. I myself use he, him pronouns, and I have XY chromosomes. Chromosomes are going to be important in the conversation we have moving forward, just to contextualize and understand where each side is coming from. And so the reason why I'm not having someone on today for this conversation is because they would come from a side of the argument, of the debate. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play a snippet from a recent episode of Dr. Phil, which I am not an avid ingester of Dr. Phil content. I don't even think I've watched one single episode of Dr. Phil. I didn't even know he was still filming. Filming, that's funny. I didn't. Anyways, but when it comes to this, I thought it'd be interesting. He recently had on both sides of the spectrum, and they have a discussion. Now, they have a debate, and debates are not useful for understanding predominantly. You can gain understanding from a debate, but let's not confuse a debate with a good conversation. In a debate, both sides are going to defend a standpoint from their reasoning, and they're not really going to seek to know each other. They're going to seek to be entrenched in their positions and win the debate. So a problem with a lot of the conservative voices in this argument, in this discussion, is that it's all viewed within debate. And the reason why it's usually a debate is because it's about winning the culture war. We can't, their view is we can't give up ground in the culture war because damaging things are happening. The social change being enacted by the other side or attempted to be enacted by the other side is damaging the culture. That's how they're viewing it. So that very much gets in the way of conversation, understanding, and love. So I think I definitely frustrate some of my conservative friends because I am going to challenge the usage of pronouns, and I'm going to bring up some of the conversations I've had with different people and prominent conservative voices on the usage of pronouns. And I hope to really highlight that I understand both sides of the arguments and make a case for love, for loving one another, accepting one another. Now, it's important to note acceptance is going to be a very interesting word in this conversation. So we've got all this like big conversation we're going to have here. I am definitely in interesting waters. You know, for me to put up content like this is really kind of a lose-lose situation in the scenario. So, you know, if you're out there watching this, you're probably going to like me a little less no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, because I'm not going to be 100% one way. I'm not going to be 100% the other way. And so there's really no benefit for me personally to make this content if I care about your approval, because I'm not going to get it. No matter where anyone's at. I'm going to be too cold for others, too hot for others. I don't know. But I'm going to make this content anyways because I think this is an important conversation. And I really hope that you'll all tune in with me and listen and be more interested in discussion and understanding, right? So my hope for everyone is, if you're worried, if you're out there and you're on the liberal side trying to enact social change, put that aside for right now. Just set it aside, put it on the shelf. If you're out there and you're trying to win a culture war for your conservative views, put that aside. Just put it aside for right now. You can leave this little safe. We're going to enact a safe space. We have a safe space here. And you can leave this safe space and try to win your culture war. You can leave this safe place and try to enact your social change. My ask for you today is that you just put that aside for right now, and you just be interested in learning and having a conversation and being more open to these discussions moving forward. I think everyone has something they can learn in this conversation. I have learned a lot from participating in these conversations, and I'd love to share what I've learned with everyone. As always in the Soul Ward, we say this is a safe place and a dangerous place. It's a safe place because we're going to discuss anything here. It's a dangerous place because we're going to discuss anything here. And this is definitely a heated and dangerous topic. If you are out there and you're going to be triggered based on whether people accept you or use your pronouns, please know I will respect you and I love you. And when I talk to you, I will use your pronouns. But through here, you know, we're going to discuss pronouns and their usage. And if this is just too sensitive of a topic for you, feel free to set it aside and come back later when if ever, you feel encouraged to discover this topic more. For the time being, though, I understand that not all the content of the Soul Ward will be acceptable to everyone and, you know, ingestible by everyone. So I hope everyone will accept the challenge, though, of participating with us tonight. That being said, I'm going to sip some coffee. We're going to watch a video. I have headphones on now, so yeah, my audio won't double feedback as it has in the past. You learn lessons. Let's listen in. So we're gonna watch this, and we're gonna react to what's going on here. I'm gonna pause it throughout and have a few discussions on, and I'm gonna highlight some debate tactics. Now, personally, I'm very good at debate, and it's a detriment to what I do. My goal in life is to not debate people. There's time where there's an appropriate time and place for debates. It's not an everyday conversation. But that being said, I'm going to point out some of the debate tactics that they're using and break them down and hopefully highlight actual conversation that can be had. So let's jump on into this thing.
I'm Addison.
And I'm Ethan.
We've been together for about
5 years.
And
Been
married
for 3 years.
I use they, them pronouns. Being non-binary just means that I just don't identify with the gender I was assigned at birth, and I don't identify exclusively with being a man or a woman. I'm something in between, outside of that binary.
My pronouns are he or they. I also identify as a non-binary. To me, being a non-binary means having the sense of freedom to explore my gender in whichever way I want. I don't have to perform or pretend to be someone I'm not. I can be my authentic self.
It's really important for us to share more information with people because people are curious, they want to understand, but sometimes they don't always have the opportunities to do that.
This is a hot topic.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it a good thing?
I guess because it creates dialogue and it invites conversation to learn about other people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are really confused about gender identity in these times, and it's good for us to have these conversations so people open their...
So I'll highlight one of the primary issues with the argument and the debate right away. They say some people are confused. And you're going to see as the conversation goes on that they're going to betray themselves with that word. They're going to say some people are confused about this, and right there they're saying they have knowledge and other people do not have knowledge, and so they want to teach people about this. Later on, they're going to say that they can't teach people about this because they don't come from certain perspectives, and so that's gonna confuse the argument a little bit. And so I wish they wouldn't have started with some people are confused, because right away they're gonna have the other person come on and it's gonna come across as if he's confused, they are not. They have knowledge, he does not have knowledge. And again, this is a great debate tactic, and they're having a debate, right? So it's not necessarily inappropriate for them to use this debate tactic, because what they're on here to do is not spread knowledge. They're on here to win a debate, both sides. So, but for the sake of conversation, if you're out there, try not to come from a standpoint of, oh, I know, you don't know. I'm going to come down from my high lofty throne and teach you, right? That's not a good place to be operating from. That doesn't invite conversation. Let's keep going.
Our minds and relearn and unlearn to what we've been taught.
Right. And Addison, many people think gender pronouns are exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community, but that's a misconception, true?
Yeah. Well, everybody has pronouns. Like, you may use he and him as your pronouns, right? I use they and them as my pronouns. We all may have a certain gender pronoun too, but I think it's important for people to understand that for trans and non-binary people, we often change our pronouns to reflect who we are when we come out and be who we are.
So one thing I want to point out here is I've had conversations with people on every side of the spectrum, and what the people I've spoken to say is that when they say that they change their pronouns from she, her to they, them to he, him, they're not saying that their chromosomes are different, right? So women have two X chromosomes, men have XY chromosomes, and someone is not saying that my anatomy and my DNA are different and now I have a different pronoun. They're saying that they have separated their genetics and their DNA from a feeling of pronouns. And so sex and gender, they've separated those. Now, previously, those two ideas were not separate. So if you said, if I say I identify as he, him, I'm saying I have XY chromosomes. This is going to be the primary confusion in the discussion, because you're going to see that the conservative side, they will refuse to separate male, female, X chromosomes, XY chromosomes. So let's continue on.
How do you explain the difference between sex and gender?
I consider sex to be our biological makeup. Our chromosomes or hormones, our genitals is a biological makeup. But our gender is more of an internal sense. So think of it like this. Sex is what's between the legs, and gender is what's between the ears, right? It's how we see ourselves on the inside.
Okay. And that's something somebody can't know. Gender is something somebody can't know just by looking at somebody.
Nope, yeah. Because everyone is going to present and express themselves in a different way. I know, it's very confusing, right? Everyone's like, what is going on? But it's really, about us breaking that assumption that we can tell someone's identity, someone's story, their pronouns, even their name, just based on how they look, right?
Yeah. And so how does someone ask? How does somebody clarify that? Ethan, what's the best way? What's the most comfortable way?
I think for me, to create a safe space for people to share their pronouns, I will say, hi, my name is Ethan. I use he or they pronouns. What about you?
I think it's really important for us to recognize other people's pronouns because, again, we can't make that assumption. But for so many people who are cisgender, meaning that you do identify with the gender that you were assigned at birth, you're not transgender or not non-binary, I think a lot of people don't even question their pronouns because we already use them and it's already assumed correctly. But for so many trans and non-binary people, that isn't often assumed correctly. So we need to take the time to get to know people.
Cisgender, it says adjective that describes a person whose gender identity matches or aligns with the gender he or she was assigned at birth. Now, this
is one thing that's been really confusing for me in these conversations is the usage of the term gender. So they say gender assigned at birth. So if you're born with XY chromosomes and you have male anatomy, then they assign you the male gender. But later on, you're going to hear that they don't consider gender and sex the same. So it would be, the word gets kind of tossed around in a weird way. It'd be better if they just, I would say, for our liberal friends who are on the other side of, this culture war, if they didn't use the word gender, if they used a different word, or just kept it as sex and gender the same. To say gender assigned at birth, and to later say that gender is, we'll let them explain, and then I'll highlight the arguments.
would be what has been traditional for centuries, right? Why does it need a term?
If we don't use that term, then we end up saying maybe real men or normal men or regular men, right? Or we just say men, and then we say maybe transgender men, right? And the thing is that we need to realize that trans women are women, trans men are men too. And so we just want to have a term for that privilege, that assumption that your gender identity is going to match the one that you were assigned at birth.
All right. And then transgender, adjective, describes a person whose gender identity does not match or align with the gender they were assigned at birth. And then non-binary describes a person whose gender identity does not fit into the traditional binary of man or woman.
See, I would, as someone new to this argument, to this whole debate that's raging, to me, it'd be better if they said sex assigned at birth versus gender, right? So their gender does not align with their sex assigned at birth. But it would just help clarify to really separate those two terms, because that's going to be the crux of the entire argument, is that sex and gender are two different things. Let's continue.
And that term can be abbreviated to, and how do you pronounce that?
NB.
NB.
NB, yeah.
Okay. And explain that.
For transgender people, we are assigned a sex at birth, and when
See, he just said,
grow up,
I'm sorry,
when there's a mismatch
they just said
of how
sex
we view
at birth.
ourselves and how society views us, then we
Instead
can
of
choose
gender
to,
at birth.
either medically transition or just socially transition, or both.
My name is Matt Walsh, and I've written a book called Johnny the Walrus. This book is about identity and imagination. He identifies as a walrus, and his mom's a little silly. She takes it seriously and thinks he really is a walrus. So she went on her phone, and there are people telling her that this isn't pretend, he's really a walrus. And his mother takes him to the doctor to have him surgically transitioned and gets him walrus hormone pills, and then eventually tries to drop him off at a zoo to live with other walruses. Not only topping the Amazon charts, my book has taken the world by storm.
You're saying that there should be no construct.
So here comes Matt Walsh, and he's going to be the conservative voice in this debate. And he wrote this book, which is coming from a standpoint that he's basically treating a person as saying that they're a boy who's saying I'm a walrus, and to say, well, he's not really a walrus, but the doctor and his mother are going to treat this boy like a walrus and transform him into a walrus. So there's even the book gets pretty graphic for kids. I would never read it to my kids, but it talks about how let's cut off your legs or whatever, like sew them together. It gets kind of scary, and I think it is designed to scare children, but he's highlighting how it can be damaging for something that's not a thing to be treated as something different, right? So he's going to move the category away from men and women and gender to walruses and humans to simplify. Now, what's important to note, again, as a conversational tactic, which can come across as a debate tactic, and here I think it's going to be used a little bit as a debate tactic, but it's actually a conversational tactic, is sometimes I realize a person and I agree more than we disagree. But I can't get the person I'm talking to acknowledge where we agree. So what I do is I expand the argument, or I expand the discussion to an absurdity to get us to agree on the absurdity. Once we agree on the absurdity, we can start moving away from the absurd and into the actual, so that way we can see where we do align. So you go far out. It's kind of that wide to small, like looking with a microscope. You start with a higher, with a lesser zoom, and you move in your zoom so you can find closer what you're looking for. Conversationally, sometimes you got to do the same thing. You got to blow back out here and say, obviously, we would never turn a kid into a walrus, right? So we can all agree that's absurd. So now let's start bringing it down to where we do agree. So that's kind of a conversational tactic he's using, but it makes people angry. So, but let's listen further.
Of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as and assigned at birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the reality. So you can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and no matter whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. Makes no sense. You don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar. That's language.
So where this guy's going to come from is that he's coming from a defensive standpoint. He wants to defend the culture. And so to defend the culture, he cannot allow himself to speak differently. He's going to protect the language. What's important to note here is, again, that's a debate. It's argumentative, and it's not seeking understanding whatsoever. He's entrenched. They are entrenched. And what we're about to witness is two people pretending to have a conversation when really they're both just entrenched in what they already believe.
I think it's a delusion. Someone is self-delusional.
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things. With children, you know, there's also just that basic confusion.
So he just called them delusional and mentally ill.
When you hear someone, a parent say, "Oh, my 4-year-old,"
not a great way to have a conversation.
I'm a girl now, and so that's what I'm gonna raise him as a girl. No, you're a 4-year-old. I have 4 kids. When a 4-year-old boy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a girl," here's a good follow-up question. What is a girl? Ask him what he means by that. What do you mean by girl? And when you ask him that, here's what he'll tell you. He will tell you what he really means is that he wants to do some of the things that girls do, like play with the dollhouse, or you know, he likes the color pink. That's fine, play with the dollhouse, but you're still a boy. And that's a question I would like to throw out to other members of the panel, actually, because just like the 4-year-old can't answer what is a girl, well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. It's like, what is a woman? Well, can you tell me what a woman is?
So, watch really closely to what happens here, and let's break this down a little bit.
No, I can't, because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
how
that's
do you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies.
Okay.
So in this discussion, he asks them, what is a woman? And what's a female? He specifically says, what's a woman? And they can't answer that. We can't tell you what a woman is. Then they turn it around on him. What's a woman? He articulately and specifically identifies what a woman is to him. So let's watch this unfold a little bit more.
We could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what
He's
they
talking about
believed in their
DNA
head,
and
but we can
chromosomes.
tell what sex they were.
Their
because
bones-
their
bones will have XX chromosomes.
Interesting. So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone.
So, again, a little bit of a lie. They say, I'm trying to understand. Are they trying to understand? I don't think they're trying to understand. They're going to try and confuse and all that, right? And I'm not trying to bash them or praise Matt. That's not what I'm doing. I want to highlight the confusion in the argument, and we're going to point out why this conversation breaks down right the moment they start talking to each other. They're instantly not talking to each other. They're talking at each other. They're defensive. They're protecting things. They're not having a discussion. This is not a good discussion.
Someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Is a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe someone who is female, identifies as a woman, right? You know, cisgender woman, right? As you just explained, maybe doesn't have the ability to reproduce. Maybe doesn't have those organs that you're talking about that are reproductive organs.
I have answered the question.
See, right there, he said a woman is someone with double X chromosomes. Now, he didn't say double X chromosomes, but he said in your DNA, in the bones. He's talking about double X chromosomes. Then Addison says, well, what if there's a woman who doesn't have double X chromosomes? See, right there, they're not adopting the terminology that Matt has laid out, and they are keeping their terminology. So Matt gave them a chance. He said, lay out your terms. Right? Now, I truly do not believe Matt would talk according to their terms. I think this was a trap. He knew how they would respond, and they responded right within his trap. Now, they probably sprung the trap on purpose too. But the point is, he started off with, you lead the conversation. They said, we can't lead the conversation. How about you lead the conversation? He said, fine. Going forward, we're going to call female people with double X chromosomes. And they said, great. What if there is a female who doesn't have double X chromosomes? That negates the definition he just set. And so they cannot play his game. They cannot speak his language. And so they're better off presenting their own language. So let's listen a little closer now.
You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not
But
myself.
you used the word, so what did you mean when you said trans women are women?
See, they're going to refuse to define woman, and I think they're using a debate tactic here. It'd be better if they defined woman within its definition. Tomorrow, I'm going to answer the worldview question for conservative Christians. According to Christian worldview, what is the prime reality, the real? And tomorrow I'm going to say Christians identify that as an indescribable God. And I will never violate the definition that the Judeo-Christian deity is indescribable, but I will describe an indescribable being, which seems like an oxymoron, but it's not. I have some analogies. You're going to have to check that out tomorrow when I have that discussion with you guys. That being said, they're going to say, he's going to say, what, so they're going to use this term woman. Woman. Okay. And it goes in any direction. They could be saying man, but they chose woman. And so they're going to say, this is a woman, something we cannot define. I think it would have been better if they had come up with a better description of an indefinable term. Now they do, and they're going to present that here in a moment. They're going to tell us what a woman is, but they start off by saying, I can't tell you what a woman is, and then they tell us what a woman is. From a debate standpoint and from a discussion standpoint, that just confuses things. So they would have been better off saying, I can tell you, here's what it is. It's a feeling. It's indefinable. It's an indefinable feeling, so I can't tell you anything because they are going to tell us something. They're going to tell us it's a feeling. So let's let them continue.
If you don't know what it means.
Right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is.
See, I cannot define what a woman is because I do not define as a woman. What a woman is, and then they define a woman. So again, it's just, the Dr. Phil invited these people on to be a spokespeople for their side, and I just wish they would have been a little bit more articulate, because they said, I can't define it, here's what the definition is. And it's just Matt is going to focus on that, and it's incorrect. And so Matt's going to say, see, you said you can't define it, but they do define it. And so it becomes a straw man. Matt's gonna say they can't define what they're talking about, but they can define what they're talking about, and they are defining what they talk about. So I really wish that they just wouldn't have confused the conversation. As someone who is an advocate for both sides and wants to see a good conversation,
Is an umbrella term. It includes people
That describes what?
people who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity. And define it
Addison
differently.
would have been better
Trans
just
women
saying that.
Are women too.
They would have been better just saying that instead of coming out the
Hold
gate
on,
and
Brandon,
saying
you
that they
wanna
can't
reduce-
define it.
Listen,
won't even tell me
you
what the
wanna
word
reduce-
means, though. So
you
that's
want to
the
reduce
problem.
women, you want to
See, they just defined what the word means, but Matt said you can't even define it. Why does he get to play that card? They opened the door for him to play that card from a debate standpoint, because they said, I can't define it, here's my definition, and he said, you can't define it. They did just define it, so they shouldn't have opened up out the gate saying that they can't define it, because Matt is now going to stick on that as a straw man argument, and it's not. He needs to concede that they did define it. So here we go.
reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals,
No.
our chromosomes, right? That's what you're
What
saying.
you want
is
to
that
do is
that's what we
what
are
you
at the end of the day.
want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood.
Okay. And what Addison said is you want to reduce men down to their DNA, how they were born, right? XY chromosomes. And he denies that. He should have said yes. Yes. That is what I want to do. Because that is what he wants to do. He wants to say you can only use the pronouns that you were born with. If you have XX chromosomes, you have to say she, her. If you have XY chromosomes, you have to say he, him. So Addison says what you want to do is reduce it down to genetics. And he said, no, what you want to do is appropriate. He goes on the attack here. They're having a debate. They're having an argument. So, they're not having a discussion. But Addison pinned perfectly what Matt was saying. And there's a philosophical difference between these contestants of this debate. And we'll talk about the philosophical differences and why they can't see eye to eye.
Okay.
And turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
I'm really concerned about what's going on in schoolrooms across the country.
The entire gender pronoun situation makes me feel very upset.
People may think that if you don't want to use the preferred
So what we can do is we can end there for the video. And I don't need these on anymore because you can hear me. Anyways, so there is a postmodernist leaning to the liberal side, right? Which is we'll call it the social change side of the debate. So there's a postmodernist approach, which is to define postmodernism is to violate a core definition of postmodernism, which is reality is what you make it. So you can't really define postmodernists at all, except to say that they're indefinable. Matt Walsh is more of he's coming from more of a facts and logic standpoint. He's coming from a Christian theist approach, but it's going to be he's leaning more on there is order, there is definition, there is a creator, and within the creation there's a design. And so if you're not following the design, you're violating the user manual, so to speak. You're trying to use a microwave as a toaster. Sure, you can probably make that bread come out black and crispy, but it's never going to be toast. So within this conversation, they break down in those fundamental problems. And so to define to get someone asking for a definition to define what is inherently indefinable is going to cause problems. One person has to come to the table for the other person and extend an olive branch and say, okay, what are the words you want to use? Let me use your words. Let me speak your language. So the postmodernist has to either approach the Christian theist and try to explain who they are to be understood within the context of Christian theism, or the Christian theist has to come to the table and try to get into the mindset of a postmodernist and ask them what it is that they believe, right? And they can only speak for themselves because by definition of postmodernism, they all are all in control of their own story. And so it'll be different from one person to the next. Now, I've had these conversations on both sides. And really, I'm going to speak to the Christian theists out there because that's the camp that I come from. And that is to say, I've had a discussion with Christian theists on this, and they're very angry with me in my stance on this. When I use people's pronouns, preferred pronouns, Christian theists by and largely as the main camp view of their camp, don't. And when I ask them why, it says because they abide by the 10 Commandments and they cannot bear false witness according to one of the 10 Commandments, so they can't lie. So if they're calling someone a female who has XY chromosomes, then they have lied and they've committed a sin, and it was wrong for them to sin. Now, there is a staunch view of language there that they're getting entrenched in. To say it's to not lie, I truly believe some of them believe that. I truly believe that is not in line with your holy book. Right. Scripture says that there is, in Romans 5, there is no law but the law of grace, right? And that all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. It talks about love. There's times where Jesus, violates the Sabbath. They're picking grain with their hands on a Sunday, or on a Saturday as it would have been, but on a Sabbath day. And they get yelled at by the Pharisees. And Jesus brings up, hey, when Jerusalem was under attack, David ate bread that was King David ate bread that was set aside for only the priests. Why? Because it was either eat the bread and be sustained and be prepared to fight, or starve to death, right? And so Jesus then says, is Sabbath made for man, or is man made for, or is man made for the Sabbath, or is the Sabbath made for man? He says the Sabbath, the day of rest, is supposed to be a benefit to humanity, not take against them. So when it comes to sharing your faith and talking with people and having love and understanding, people who take the hardline rule of, I'm not going to bear false witness, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to call someone who has double X chromosomes the he, him pronoun, because that is lying. It's me saying that they have XY chromosomes when they have XX chromosomes. But if you actually soften your hardened heart and you see that person, really see them and ask to understand them and care about entering into their world as an advocate, what you're going to see is they are not saying that they were born with XX chromosomes and now they have XY chromosomes. What they're doing is they're developing a new system of language. And too many Christians come from the standpoint of the Bible is an American book written to an American people because America, oorah. And it's not. It's not an American book. It's not a Western civilization book. It's an Eastern, it comes from the Middle East, right? It was written to Hebrews. It was written to Greeks. And so we have to contextualize. That's why I've got all these books back here, which is translating Hebrew and Greek and understanding culture and understanding world religions and seeing how the Christian theology was taken to these other religions and contextualized, right? Paul, when he goes to Athens, they thought he was an atheist because he served one God. And he looked at their big pantheon of gods, and there was an inscription to an unknown God. And Paul said, I come to teach you that which you don't know, the unnamed God, the unknown God. So that which you don't know, I do know. Let me teach you about this unnamed God. He contextualized and appropriated their own language, their own system of belief, and brought that in. So what I see on the conservative Christian side is I refuse to come to the table and talk. If they want to talk They got to talk to me. Well, you're in violation of your own holy book. The way of proselytization, the way of discipleship, the way of evangelism, there's the word, and outreach is not sit on your high, lofty, golden thrones in your churches and people have to beg and crawl and come to you. It is go out. Go, therefore, making disciples of the nation, teaching them the ways I've instructed you, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Go. Commission is to be sent out. So contextualize, get into a culture, learn a culture. When missionaries go out in the world, and I've spoken to missionaries, they're angry with you guys. So they don't like what we're doing here in your comfy houses and your society. They're out in bombed out areas dealing with persecuted people who are actually suffering, and they bring the gospel to these people and they translate it into their heart language, the language that they think in, and they go to them. But in our Western society, the Christians here, they sit in their churches and they say, I won't talk to these people. They do not evangelize. They do not proselytize. They do not take their teaching to other people. And they say they got to come to us and they better get their act together. And now I'm broad brushing here. That's not everyone everywhere, but that is what I see when I see people say, I won't use pronouns. I won't talk to people. I won't speak their language. They got to speak my language. Right? It's like this is America, speak American. And that's kind of their mentality. God bless America, right? But if you actually get involved in the conversation, they are not, people on the other side of the spectrum, they are not saying that their chromosomes have changed. And so to call lies, they're changing the language. They're adding a definition. Now, when it comes to the culture war, people don't want to give an inch on the culture war because it leads to social change that they don't agree with, and they feel like the heart and spirit of the nation is shifting away from what they would like. When you vote and you go vote however you want, right? Vote your conscience, do whatever, but don't confuse your voter rights with speaking to and loving other people. You got to be loving. You got to care about people. You got to enter into their world. You got to understand where they're coming from. And so that's where I come from. I have a little bit of a heart against this. That being said, all right, so I've just made all of the Christian theists angry at me because I gave them a little bit of a hand slap and I challenged their and they don't agree. Like I've brought this up to people in conservative circles, and I've been, they're not happy with me. They accuse me of hurting people, of all this, of not being an advocate in the culture war, of sinning and encouraging other people to sin, right? So I just don't fit in with those people, but I'm happy to not fit in with those people. They can keep their side. Unfortunately, I'm now going to tick off the other half and be left isolated and alone. But I will say that Nova, and specifically, I really liked her shadow work, and it does align with my own worldview in a lot of ways. Let's talk about shadow work, because I think to talk about Christian theism is triggering for a lot of people on the other side. So let's talk about shadow work. Shadow work says appreciate who you are and love who you are. To say that I was born with XX chromosomes, and what I commonly hear is I was born in the wrong body. So that means core to your definition is something wrong. There's something wrong with you. Now, I'm not saying that. They're saying that about themselves. There's something wrong with me. I was born in the wrong body. So let's forget Christian theism. Let's look at shadow work. Shadow work would say, embrace what you think is wrong with you. Learn to love it and accept it, right? And I feel like Nova, I've had long conversations with her. I feel like she would back me up on that. But just taking that standpoint, imagine if you said there's nothing wrong with you, that you were made wonderful and beautiful or handsome, whatever word you identify with more. You don't have to change your pronouns. You can have at it, but But I want to tell you that you are wonderful and you are acceptable and you are amazing and you are outstanding. And whether you wear pants or a dress, I don't care. Whether you have hair on your armpits or you shave them, I don't care. Whatever your anatomy is, I don't care. You are wonderful. You are amazing. And there's nothing wrong with you. I hope to the deepest fiber of my being that you find self-acceptance, self-love, and self-worth. My heart is that as I believe that there is an exterior creator being, I believe God, that you connect with that higher power and you find love and acceptance with them. That's my heart. So what I've seen, I was talking to a dear friend recently about the rise in depression amongst our nation. There's a lot of depression that we see. And it's only getting worse. And we're seeing this in all these diagnoses going out. People are not happy. And I think we tried to fix a problem. We tried to fix a problem. I feel like I was born in the wrong body. Therefore, I'm going to try to fix that problem. Now, I know I'm speaking to a mostly postmodernist crowd, but let's just look. Has it worked? Are you happier? I think when your core definition is something's wrong with me, I was born wrong, I am wrong. When you lock yourself alone in a room and it's just you, yourself, in the dark, deeply at your core, regardless of how much love and acceptance you get from people outside, if you inherently believe something is wrong with you, then you've got a problem with self-love, right? So you want to accept yourself. If you can't accept yourself, then it doesn't matter if everyone else accepts you. That's a cosmetic fix for people outside in the world to say, I love you, I accept you. That's fantastic. I want people to say that to you. But if you don't accept and love yourself, then you're left with damage. And so that is the heart. Now, truthfully, the true believers on the other side of the spectrum, where they're coming from, let me extend the olive branch, because I extended it on your behalf on the other side. I said, listen, Christian theists, other people on the other side of the culture war, you gotta, I extend the olive branch on your guys' behalf. You got to understand, it's a language thing. It's a linguistic thing. Shame on you for not having the conversation. Shame on you for not showing grace and love and trying to not have a meaningful conversation, right? So it was on your behalf. Let me come on their behalf. There are true believers out there. Not all of them. Not most of them. But there are some true believers out there who truly believe that when they call you a different pronoun, that they are hurting you. Because it goes back to self-acceptance. They want you to see yourself as beautifully or handsomely and wonderfully made. They don't care if... Oh, here we go. Hold on. They don't care... Let me quiet this down. There we go. They don't care if you wear pants or a dress, if you pierce your ears or don't pierce your ears, if you have armpit hair, if you don't have armpit hair, if you shave your legs, you don't shave your legs, if you wear makeup, you don't wear makeup. They don't care. The true believers, again, there are a few of them out there. They just don't want to hurt you. They want you to accept yourself. So have grace on them. Just have grace on them. They're grown up in a different system of belief. They come from a different system of belief. And what they really want is they want you to accept yourself, that there's nothing wrong with you, that you are wonderful, that you are amazing, that you are breathtaking. That is where some of the true believer on the other side, true, like, good-hearted people, that's really where they're coming from. They just don't know how to speak your language. Honestly, I've been involved in this. I want to lessen depression on the whole. I've reached out to someone who specializes in mental health. I'm going to interview them soon and highlight their nonprofit work for mental health. But there is a pandemic greater than COVID. And it's mental health, and it's been a problem for a long time. And I'm there, and I'm rubbing shoulders with you guys, and I'm in it with you guys, and I'm there with you, and I care about you, and I put my arms around you, and I've I've invested time and energy, and I cry for some of you when you don't even know it. There is a pandemic of mental health. And what I want to do is I want to find a solution. And I do truly, honestly believe the solution is with self-love and self-acceptance. You are breathtaking. You are amazing. You are wonderful. And there's nothing wrong with you. And if you feel like you were born in the wrong body, I am so sorry you feel that way. But I don't care if you have any cosmetic changes. I don't care if you identify one way or another. I just want you to find acceptance that there's nothing wrong with you. You were born wonderful, and that you don't need to change yourself at all, that you're amazing. So that's my heart. I want to see, and I don't know everything or anything. All I know is that I love people, and I want to see less issues with mental health. I want to see less suicides. I want to see less depression. I want to see overall just people living more mentally healthy. And I am drowning in people with mental illness. And I am not seeing effective tactics at our culture at large. I'm not seeing people who have mental issues with mental health change something and be long-term happier. What I'm seeing, short-term happiness. People change some things and it feels good. It's like dumping an ex and getting a rebound lover. A rebound boyfriend or girlfriend. Yeah, it feels great at first. They're new, they're exciting, they're wonderful. But if you haven't dealt with your actual issues, that relationship's going to fail. No one else's relationship's going to fix you. And that's what we do with mental health. We say, I'm going to change certain things about myself. I'm going to put on new clothes. I'm going to use different words. But if you haven't addressed that you truly believe there's something wrong with you, then it's a short-term change. And that short term could be days, weeks, months, or years. But I want to get to the heart of self-acceptance and self-love. That's my diagnosis. I'm not an expert. I don't have all the answers. I am not a teacher here. I'm an eternal student, and I want to hear from you guys, and I want to love you guys, and I want to know how to love you better and do better. So I hope that you'll still talk to me. I hope that we can engage in these conversations, and I hope that we can both together look for ways to increase mental health awareness, mental health across the board just in general, and the way we love and accept and approach other people. And that's really what I'm looking for. Guys, this has been a really rewarding conversation for me. It's been a conversation that I've actively stepped into and am trying to do better in, and I'm still searching for a lot of the answers. I will say, I don't think we found a good answer yet in the culture at large. I don't think the culture is solving that problem. Otherwise, we wouldn't see an uptick in depression. We wouldn't see an uptick in mental health issues. We're still seeing that. So let's look at the data. Let's be open to rework a few things. But ultimately, let's just love each other. Let's just try to help each other out. Thank you guys for this conversation. If you want to check out soulwar.org for ways to support us, to support what it is I do here, please join the Discord channel. I hope that people can talk amongst each other and have great, fantastic conversations. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. All right. Bye-bye.